my favorite quotes, which I'm beginning to dispute more and more, is Kevin Kelly. Actually, I was quoted by Kevin Kelly because he's not quite sure when he first said it, so he just keeps quoting himself. The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. So there's a lot going on, it's hard to keep up to know what's happening. So in some cases, some of the things we're talking about today already exist someplace. You just might not know them yet. So part of my journey is to help you know pieces for your journey on what's going on. But I'm not quite sure that's exactly it. I tend to say instead, quoting myself, the future is here, but it's rapidly transforming core music ecosystems, and it's accelerating. We're in the midst of a massive set of changes that's impacting wide varieties of experiences, the way we enjoy concerts, the way we create communities, and in many ways, we're talking about it in different silos. So I'm hoping to break down some of that conversation today. We have been talking about rapid change for a very long time. I had a chance to meet Alvin Toffler at one point in time, but he, for a lot of us, for some of you, you're not old enough for this, but for a lot of you, you are, that we were going to be needing to learn to face rapidly changing change, and that it was a big change for humans to be going through that. And I know a lot of 30-year-olds who are frustrated that they already feel too old around technology, that they can't keep up with what's going on. But science fiction's been trying to wrestle with this for a while. We've been envisioning the future. I'm a big Star Trek Next Generation. The outfit and Riker tells you that. I really was envisioning is that this is going to be our world, that we're going to be in this environment where we were going to be able to create whatever we wanted in it and consume and be anyone we wanted to be. And in many ways, we're echoing back to that now with our conversations on virtual reality. If you haven't read Snow Crash, raise your hand if you've read Snow Crash. Okay, consider this a homework assignment. It is great on Audible. It's a wonderful audiobook. It was written in 1992 about what would essentially happen when we got into VR. What would that be for our lives? Where would we choose to work? What would we choose to be socially? Who would we be? Has anybody here been in Second Life? Same person. Jay, you're going to keep holding your hand up all. Okay. So Second Life is coming back with a virtual reality space so that you can actually be collaborating with people in a virtual world. Some of this was already anticipated, and it's a little disturbing to listen to or read Snow Crash and hear what the impacts on society might become. Now, we do have, of course, WALL-E giving us in 2008 this image, which to me, sometimes I see a lot of people looking like this now with their smartphones, sitting in wonderful places, face down, and this look, hopefully my kids don't look like this. And then we have, of course, in Up, the whole concept of squirrel, our attention deficit disorder problem that is by research increasing with the way that we are ingesting devices, ingesting content, which is creating all sorts of challenges for people trying to figure out how to live in this world. But now we're in a massively connected world. This picture was done by a Facebook intern, capturing a moment in time of all of the different interconnections in Facebook. And you can see from this a have and have not world as well as our connected world. But we are living in a very connected world that then makes what we do different, how we consume different. And a lot of it has to do with this lovely device. If you have one in your hand, please hold it up. Couldn't even put it down for this conversation. Notes. Oh yeah, you're taking notes. I know that one. Yeah. But that device is in an increasing number of hands. So we're at 81% of smartphones, not just cell phones, not just feature phones. We're now at 81% by ComScore's notes. If you're taking a look at 21-year-olds, I think you're at 97% have smartphones, not just, again, feature phones. And we're really coming to a point of kind of saturation. It's an age breakout, and it's interestingly not race or socioeconomic in a lot of cases for what really comes out by using smartphones. But what does that then do to our experiences? I mean, this frustrates the heck out of me. This frustrated the heck out of me at Grammy after party and trying to see around people all with their cell phones out, not being live in the experience. What's happened though, and this is Nielsen numbers that were delivered in January, is that even in the past 2 years, this is time spent with all media. that we've gone up from 2004 to 2016 an entire hour of media consumption. And it's all on app web on a smartphone. Where is that coming out of? It's not coming out of TV time, which is eroding a bit, and young men are leaving to go play esports and do other things. Radio, DVD for the people who still are bothering to look at DVDs and Blu-ray. But we're having it that increasing part of our work life, of our personal life, of our time we should be talking with our spouses and our families, our dinner table life, is going into face first, ears plugged in our smartphones. So I'm going to talk about a lot of things today. I'm going to hit some themes pretty quickly that I'll keep coming back to. One of them is ubiquity. We are now expecting everywhere media. And we're expecting immediacy in our searches, in our information, but also in the influence we receive on what should be listened to, where should we go. We have apps now that will essentially, you'll ping and okay, that's the concert I go to tonight, that's the pop-up club, that's the warehouse that hasn't been necessarily approved by LAPD and LA Fire to be having an event tonight, that we're expecting, though, ubiquity of information. That we have, sorry, a little hard to read like blue there, location data. We know where we are, but now do all our services know where we are? All of our music services, Google can give you a rundown. You can get a map of where you've been, and you may not have that information, though you can pull it, but many other people know where you are, who you're with, the context, what you've been listening to, the emotional implications of the music that you've just played for the past 5 songs, and everything you've done in search in conjunction with that, and if you're sitting outside the mall, sitting outside the car dealer, other places maybe you're not supposed to be. You have tiny decision screens. I mean, I'll try not to talk about the past presidential election, but we have information bubbles that we're making decisions on our lives based on these tiny little screens of what comes up first. It's affecting students. I teach pretty dramatically, but it's making influencers more important, and I'll be hitting that a little later. And it also is getting to be really pushing our fast thinking instead of our slow, reasonable thinking. We're taking first information and making decisions based on those anchors, pieces of information. We also are living in audio bubbles, which I'll come to again, that we are isolating ourselves in earbuds and headphones in our work environments, in our home environments. And then Cyborg Anthropology is a phrase from Amber Case, but we are creating an external brain we carry with us everywhere that is helping make our decisions, storing our preferences. And there's a fairly new phrase called dataism, which is believing in the algorithm will provide, that people are believing the algorithm will make better decisions than they do.
Sad.
I'm sorry, this does, I'll make it happier. Okay, no, so I'm going to look at sort of 3 pieces of this puzzle. We spend a lot of time in the music trade press talking about what's happening in recorded music. I'm going to talk about the song, what's happening with the song as an entity, as a music business, etc. And then talk about community, how this is impacting our communities, and then our experiences as well. So to me, the theme under this is there's a new curation, new power players. We talked about Google in that wonderful introduction. But there's a lot of other curators now who are creating the influence for who will be your music patron, fan, community, and I'll show some of the numbers under a lot of that stuff. So we'll start out with song. And we're going to hit a few themes here. One is that we have immersive everywhere music, that music plus data plus location creates immediate in-context data about you. That we now have lifestyle pervasive in-context advertising that is surrounding you based on the fact they know where you are. The playlist is now the new radio. It's re-aggregating audiences. I'll share some numbers with that. We now know what happened yesterday all over the United States on everybody's individual music consumptions, but who knows it? And what do they know about you? And do the artists know it? And then we are now the product versus the song, we as consumers, we as listeners. You guys know this story. So the peak of the CD block in 1999-ish was the peak of revenue for recorded music It really is the peak of buying a package, an unbreakable package of songs. And the slivers of replacement technologies have in no way made up for that. Most of you are living this dream. But this is in terms of revenue. Units is another story. So we really changed from these CD blocks, having the CD as music, and this is data from RIAA, to really moving into a singles business. And when we weren't even necessarily done with that, we then began to have that fade out. So this is using the album equivalent numbers. Who knows what album equivalent numbers are? Who likes album equivalent numbers? Hands go down quickly. Oh, a couple people like album.
Yeah.
Okay. So the concept that is pitched here is that we try to translate this volume of singles to the album, is that you need to take the digital sales, the individual digital downloads, and divide it by 10. So this light blue element here is, or the grayish element, is taking the digital downloads, those singles, and dividing it by 10. And so you have the CDs dramatically dripping downward, and you have digital album sales that looked like they were going to be something, but that's fading away as well. And then you began to have coming in then streaming. And so streaming has brought the end up, but you're having to get this to be on the same curve, divided by 1,500. So if you actually were looking at units, you'd be having a sky-high piece at the end there. But even so, look at just in the past couple of years, the proportions here, that we are already turning into massively a streaming business. So this is from Nielsen's year-end data. So even just in the past year, digital downloads down 25%. Initially, iTunes was making no comment or glimmer before when this started to drop. Now it's very obvious. And then streams have gone up in audio 76%, in video only 7.5%. And I'll show you in a second why that was originally of some concern when we look at the parties on who these all are. So in terms of what's happening, and this is from BuzzAngle's data, in terms of what's happening in terms of quarter over quarter, is that we are having ad-supported streams continue, but we are finally having subscription stream revenue, subscription streams increase as people are increasing subscribers. I was talking really well there until there, okay. But what's also happening is the video streams have not continued at that sharp trajectory. For about a year, we had weird numbers because of the whole autoplay stuff that was going on with YouTube, and that's now settled out. So the growth that's coming out in a lot of this is coming from subscription streams. So we're having revenue-inducing revenue and not just ad-inducing revenue come into the mix. And what's happening, interestingly also, and this is from BuzzAngle's data, that what we're listening to is shifted as well. So I will translate it since some of you in the back are going, wow, she has small stuff on there. So the gray is deep catalog, which for physical album sales for 2016 was about 50%, and deep catalog more than 156 weeks old, so 3 years. And then new is about 21%. So when people are coming to buy physical, a lot of it is going to deep catalog as well as catalog and then recent being 2 months to 18 months. When I'm looking at audio streams though, I'm actually only hitting about 9% of new, but I'm really going deeper into stuff that is 2 months to 3 years. Well, how are you finding this? If I have all these songs available, and I'm not necessarily going to the new music that's getting a lot of press and commentary and influencers, I'm essentially wandering into a whole other slew of music. This sounds really optimistic, though. People are listening to all sorts of great, richer, historical, phenomenal, not just what's on tops on the charts right now. And yet, how do we choose all this, and what do we choose in this environment? And this part's the one that's a bit harder to chew on. Now, you can believe the different myths and legends about how many tracks are out there in the various services. As far as I know, no one's going out to count. Yes, you have 50 million tracks. That's exactly what you have. But they are tracking what actually is getting streamed from the services. So in 2016, 28 million tracks were streamed at least once. Of that, 42% of plays were for the top 5,000 songs. 73% of plays were the top 50,000 songs. So what we're still playing, it may be not new releases, but it is a lot of the same songs are being influenced to be in people's vocabulary, to be playing off the different streaming services. Is this good news? Does it mean that you need to understand how in the world people find the songs they're playing? Because I'm typing. So, time spent listening, and I'll get past the numbers in a bit, but setting the stage as to why we are where we are. So, streaming, so this is from Music Watch, Russ's wonderful service. Time spent listening. Streaming music services for the time we're listening to music is now 28%. AM/FM radio is still there at 24%. Your digital downloads are only at 14% of the time you're listening to music. CDs, 8%. Yes, Sirius XM, my friend in the car, 6%. So in terms of our headspace, what we're doing, that 28% of our music enjoyment and listening is coming also from the streaming music. How are we figuring out what to listen to? So, sorry, confusing slide. It was supposed to come up one by one in a spectacular way. So somebody knows what you did yesterday. You may not know, but the data is now out there that there are services, just like they're tracking what tracks are played, that there are people who know what you listened to yesterday. And as a result, though, you have companies who are creating business intelligence units. Anybody involved in business intelligence in the room? One person. We'll talk to you later. But quite a few of major concert companies, ticketing companies, etc., are hiring into their business intelligence units so that they can model, predict, and influence from all this data and behavioral data what you may do next. And not just on listening, but how that data is going to be impacting what you might do in concerts, what you might do for ticket sales, what you might do in terms of relationships with artists. That we also have predictive analytics coming in, not just saying what they can get you to do, but predict what business may happen based on your behavior, location, context, loved ones, what other people do. You have new tastemakers that come out of trying to influence this mix. You have aggregators as the new power brokers, again, as Google was mentioned earlier. But you also have playlists becoming increasingly important as we have these tiny little devices and are making decisions about what we listen to. So, oh, there it is. That's not look nice that way. So what we essentially have is accelerating changes that the business models need to change around, and that many companies aren't really digesting yet. So, who are those power brokers? Ear brokers. I like that. Ear brokers. Who are taking a look at how we listen, collecting the data, and providing us the music. So this is also time spent listening from 2016, again from Music Watch. Pandora still has a gigantic footprint. I say still because they get a lot of press that they are whatever is happening with Pandora. But Pandora is 25% still of our listening, of what we're listening to. Pandora One being their paid service, and not as much, 3%. YouTube, major power broker with what's happening with music, happening with information, happening with a lot of you who are having to sort of double check what's happening on all of their data reporting and finding that they oftentimes underreport somehow of what's happening with listening. A lot of battles going on with YouTube. We have Spotify that is 17% listening, though a nice heavier premium area. iHeartRadio 6%, Amazon, who most people don't talk about in the conversation, but is the upcoming real behemoth in this, along with, and there's our lovely iTunes trying to figure out the time spent listening, along with Facebook, who isn't here yet, but doesn't believe they should be paying for music. So what's happening is a world of curation. This list comes from Chartmetric, who I'm a bit of a fan of. And so in many ways, this is a list of the top playlists in Spotify, and the vast majority of them are Spotify playlists that then you have to work your way into. So playlists, who listens to playlists here? How do you find what playlists that you then choose to listen to? Do you listen to Spotify playlists? Nodding of heads in the room. We're being led right. There's a lot of nodding heads in there. And even the ones who aren't Spotify, so we have filters owned by Sony. Yeah. So part of it is that a lot of the playlisters are owned by major labels that your average listener has no idea as well. Why is this important? Well, notice the numbers here, just these top ones. 26 million, we're down to about 4 million. I know it's small for those in the back, but that's what the numbers on here are. Once you exclude Spotify, you suddenly jump down to 1.4 million followers. That we get down to the folks who are independent playlisters, and still some of these are big. Walt Disney Records, PlayStation Music, having a fairly large playlist there. But does this matter? Does being on a playlist matter? Well, let me share some other metric data. Taking a look at the weekend. Spotify followers, about 5 million followers just in Spotify, on quite a few playlists, but the listeners from the top 5 playlists, 10% of their listeners come from being on the global top 50, 9% from today's top hits. United States top 50, 1.2 million. So of the top 5 playlists, 10 million listens, that's 26% of their total listens, come from just being on those top 5 playlists. Well, they're a big act. Yeah?
Am I correct when you said that the major labels, curate those top 5 playlists?
No. That they also have, the ones that, there are other playlists that are in the top group that are other names that a lot of consumers and possibly people here don't know are owned by labels.
Got it.
So, Cream, anybody heard of Cream, a deep tropical house from Norway? So they've got, are you guys following them? There's 7,678 people who follow them. Anybody follow them on Spotify here? Follow them. You like them? Okay. That from their top list, and they're also on the global top 50, etc. Their top 5 playlist total is 3 million listens. That's 62% of their Spotify listening is just coming from those playlists. I've seen some of the backside of some of the artist data on these things, and just even seeing it change from week to week, that having the playlist move you on and off dramatically can move your numbers from week to week. Now this looks, you're still looking at 39 million plays, 4.8 million plays. Yeah, but if you translate that into what it really pays out, we're actually not talking about a lot of money, and that's possibly a whole nother conversation, right? But that's per week. That's not too bad. Oh, excuse me, per month, that's not good. No, that's per month. So 10,000 to 20,000 translation, and 1 to 2,000 from having 4.8 million listens for the month. But that's actually what doesn't, I'm not bothered by that as much. The playlisters bring attention to people. They bring attention to music. They help tour us around when otherwise we have these small devices we're trying to make audio decisions based on. We don't necessarily remember what we're listening to. But Spotify then takes what we're doing and breaks it into emotional states, and then is selling access to our emotional states to advertisers. So this is directly from their Spotify for Brands page, that they have these 8 modes are some of the available activities and moods. So they market you in your workout, party, focus, commute, romance. I'm not sure I like them marketing my romance. Dining, travel, and relaxing. So if you saw their stuff at CES, you could walk through, and they literally were talking to advertisers about how to then tie each of these spaces into ad messages, knowing the context at which and when you were in those spaces. So they also have retargeting and sequential messaging for long-term brand product narratives, figure out across all their platforms, and how to then have behavioral segments to be able to go for user streaming habits, along with interest, lifestyle, shopping behaviors, and third-party data providers. So you're being sold. You are the product. Your emotional state is what sells their ads. Does that make you feel great? They know more about you than your spouse, probably. Well, that's probably self-evident in some cases. So let's take it another step. Data plus natural language processing. Anybody talk to their phone to get information nowadays, right? Do they talk to their Echo yet? Alexa, play Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen from Spotify.
So, what are you going to ask? Is she going to start? She's waiting, she's shy. There she goes. So, what are you going to say if people do on average 2.7 words on a Google search? What are you going to think of when you tell it to play music? Right? Alexa, play that song that goes, I'll be your lifeline tonight. Alexa, play the top country songs from 2003. Play music for a dinner party. Play the most popular rock from the 90s. How are they going to think about your music and think to ask? Is this the embodiment of playlist power? That I'm going to think of a playlist, I might not think of something specifically. Alexa, stop. Thank you. If I say, Alexa, thank you, she says, you're welcome. And so part of it, this is other ways that the major aggregators of music are then finding their way into this conversation, be it Amazon Music, Pandora, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, so that they're standing there at the open door. Now you're thinking, well, how many people really have these? Well, 8 million people as of January. And what's interesting about it, lots of articles already. Amazon Echo is winning the race to a screenless future. Goodbye privacy, hello Alexa. Amazon Echo, the home robot who hears it all. Amazon Alexa data wanted in murder investigation.
To the question I heard.
Oh, I keep talking about you. That's why she keeps talking back. But what's interesting also, and this is data from Music Watch, is that the propensity to actually have Amazon Echo or Dot in your home increases for streaming music consumers. So about 7% of people have Amazon Prime Music, but about 22% of Amazon Echo users have it. Very strong correlation with, actually, 3 times as many people who have TuneIn, or 3 times as many Amazon Echo or Dot users have TuneIn than your average person. Spotify Premium, it's more than double. iHeartRadio, it's almost double. So the propensity to have these music services also is a propensity to have, what's her name, in your home. And she's moving, or they're trying to move her into the car. Right? You're driving, you need hands-free, right? But at the same time, do you want then music decisions to be made based on whatever sentence comes out of somebody's mouth? Is this a different type of marketing to realize the playlists get to be even more important? And yet, the recorded song is just a slice of the pie. This is back from the 2012 Future of Music Coalition data that about 6% of income of the 5,000 artists they talked to were derived from sound recordings. There's lots of other slices of that pie, but we're just talking about the song, right? What about experience? How do we change experience? So, experience is being changed by alone media. Talk about that in a second. The growth of festivals and the fear of missing out. So I have to be somewhere I'm not going to as much stuff, and I'm seeing a lot more, so festivals are continuing to benefit from some of these social changes. The changing role of driving Uber and the walkable marketplace, which I'll talk about now. I'm working with a group of undergraduate students looking at a project on the present and future of music in Los Angeles. And they're doing interviews around town. If anybody wants to be interviewed, please let me know. But they're finding for a lot of people who are in their age group, which is in their 20s, that they immediately now are thinking, how much will it cost me to Uber or Lyft to the concert? And not needing parking, and wanting to go where things are walkable. It's changing pretty significantly the consideration of where people are going and experiencing live music from a technology that they're using and choosing off their cell phone. Gentrification and small venue pressures, I'll talk more about this in a later part of this. Floating events as new curators, and virtual reality and new out-of-home experiences. So let me cut into this a bit. many people's homes are much quieter now? When you've got kids, teenagers, spouses with their own headsets on, with their own audio environments. When I show Alexa to my students, also in their 20s, they said, well, we would never use that. I talked to her. She's going to start talking again. I mentioned her name. She's confused. But they say, I wouldn't do that because I listen to all my music at home with earbuds or a headset so that it doesn't bother my roommates. And there's a lot of research now looking at homes, sending anthropologists into homes that families are talking much, much less as everyone's wearing their own audio experiences. You walk into office environments and people are wearing separate headsets and not speaking. I've walked into one major music label over the summer and saw nearly everyone wearing headsets, not talking to anybody else in the room. You know, we really are having an increasing use of streaming at work. That's where part of that extra hour of media content's coming from. But in closed audio environments and really shocking levels of silence in homes. Now, I have a son who's playing Overwatch, and is now competing heavily, so he's locked up with his headset on all the time. My husband is doing whatever he's doing, listening to stuff in the room, and I've got music blaring in the main room, just totally ticking me off. But experience is a big part of how we make money with music, how we enjoy music, how we celebrate music. So this is part of the data from Nielsen's Music 360 results from this past year, that we do have attended in the last 12 months. We have about 59% of people have gone to live concerts with one main headliner, small live music sessions 41%, live concerts with multiple headliners 40%, music festivals 33%, and then club events with DJs or a specific DJ 16 or 14. But these numbers actually are the indexing and over-indexing, and that teens, millennials, and interestingly with this study, Hispanic listeners, are really been over-indexing in some cases, so for teens, trying to go to music festivals and multiple headliners, and for club events, millennials going up. But we are having engagement with live performance. That's very important in the community for music, in the economics of music, and a lot of the emotional satisfaction with music. And this is another hit at that same thing, looking at that sort of share of wallet. I like this one's look a little better, but part of that, even that's being impacted. As the earlier slide showed, this is at the request of Matt and Zoe. We ask that people not use their cell phones to take pictures and video, but instead enjoy the show they have put together in 3D. But we're not being present for concerts. How do we change and improve the live experience so that we are getting people to put their phones down? Is that the goal? What is the economics of it? So we have lots of things happening technologically in concert spaces, whether it's iBeacons, Listener to be able to triangulate where you are on your cell phone, a lot of things to be able to customize the experience from where you are, but tracking you at the same time. And then now also taking a look at ways to have it so that I can be engaging in concerts from the safety and happiness of my own home with virtual reality. So I did bring some stuff for people who want to see me afterwards. I do have a Google Cardboard for anybody who hasn't seen a Google Card. Have you not seen a Google Cardboard before? Come see me afterwards. We can do that. But we have the ability to take concerts now and take them into your home, or in some cases watch them in VIP tents, so that you can have a front row seat for a premium experience while you're actually at the concert live. So there's lots of both experimentation and launches that have been happening at various festivals. Eric Church is doing a whole thing with Vantage TV. I won't take the time here to kind of go through that. But we do have that One Republic has put a video out of kids with Nokia, Universal Music Group, and Interscope, which you can see, which takes you around, and I'm glad to show you afterwards that. But we're also having location-based VR. So you're thinking, well, that stuff's expensive. To have an HTC Vive set is, without the computer, $799. Well, there's now clubs that are starting in various parts where I can actually be immersed in virtual reality by going to clubs, especially in Thailand, Taiwan, and a bunch of other places are beginning to put in place live lands, so that you have an arcade you can go into. Could that be a music environment? Could I go in and engage and be at a concert by going to a local arcade, by going to a local mall, and expand the business? Let me hit quickly on community. That we've got so many things happening with the changing roles of clubs, cities, curators, and how a lot of artists are doing cooperatives and new label structures. This could be an hour all by its lonesome. Let me just hit a couple spots. I mean, what is the community for music's future? Chance the Rapper for a streaming exclusive album. Thanks SoundCloud in his thank yous at the Grammys. So what is the life cycle for artists? Do you start on YouTube and SoundCloud and go then to festivals and other larger events? Is there a role for clubs? Is there local community support for launch, which he definitely had with his start? What is the launch community now if you're not going to be necessarily doing concerts in clubs? There's a lot of work being done in many cities. Interestingly, it doesn't seem to be yet Los Angeles. Taking a look at what you do to actually help have a robust local music scene and environment. How to work with public policy issues like alcohol laws and fire marshal, and how to work on that. So Austin has found a very large decline in clubs and is working very hard to do something about that. Toronto, the same. New York is working on that. Toronto's actually having a conference on April 21st taking a look at that. There's one in Berlin in April and October in Memphis, with cities trying to figure out how do we work with a new music environment to make this a robust part of our community. Robust for tourism, robust for young people, robust for a healthy community. And I would like to have that conversation in Los Angeles. And then you have the new curators that are doing anything from having roving clubs to having roving groups to resident advisor telling you what to do tonight, Pigeons and Planes, and other folks that are the new influencers. How do we think about who's telling people what is the next new great fabulous thing in a cell phone first world? So we're accelerating all of this stuff. Where are we going with it? So here's the end of that chart, where here's now the audio streams, again divided by 1,500. What will the next stage be? Will we end up like Sweden, where Spotify is something like 90% of their music market? Where are we going? Are we digital fish? Are we waiting to be on the hook as consumers and as musicians and as everybody in the system that are swimming in digital water and can't see where we're going? How do we see better, and how do we deal with community and engagement in a overly monitored world? And can we use the information that comes from our recorded music, part of our consumption, to better inform the experiences and communities for everything else? So, I have a sheet for you with all these lovely boxes on it when you leave. But what questions do you have? Wow, I can see so many shocked faces. I apologize. How do I make this happen? Go ahead.
What do you
How
think?
do we, as songwriters and composers, initiate a conversation with power brokers to get them to pay attention to what we need and also maybe give over more of a percentage of the streaming royalty rates? Because it's pretty low right now. It's kind of ridiculous.
And heading lower,
Right.
right?
How do we get more of the pie essentially from the power brokers?
It is in many ways and not just the current power brokers, but the future power brokers, right?
I'm going to out her, but you have some in-house expertise. You should tap into that.
Okay.
And actually, no, I was fascinated to hear your answer because that's I co-founded an organization for songwriters that is basically focusing on that exact question, like how do we end up with a bigger piece of the pie? Because we drew the short stick as songwriters. There's no marketing, there's no merch, there's no sound, we don't have a piece of the sound recording, so how do we find more parity?
What's that organization called?
It's called SONA, Songwriters
yeah.
Program.
And your name?
Michelle Lewis.
Michelle Lewis, okay. There's other people in the room, I think, who are wrestling with some of this stuff.
When do you think artificial intelligence starts actually writing the lyrics and creating the music?
Already happening.
Yeah.
And especially if you're talking also about the Tom Friedman book, that's also, he gives quite a few examples in there. And actually, the Google Duet AI, they just did a whole bunch of press on it the past couple days, where you play the piano and it plays with you as a duet. I'm crappy, it's crappier, but there's a lot of stuff out there already. Spotify, through some of the things it was doing with Echo Nest, was already doing a whole bunch of remixing stuff before. I saw it at the Next Web a few years ago, and I know I've got several albums that are on Spotify, and I'm kind of going, I gave you no right to slash up my music and do stuff with it. But
Yeah, and also, this little device here. You know, once upon a time, tobacco companies moved into convenience food and decided to figure out how to make it addicting through sugar and salt. So I'm assuming somebody's figuring out how to get into your mind subconsciously through that to influence what you listen to,
Oh,
what
yes.
you do, and where you go.
absolutely. And when I purchase, because right now, if I purchase through that, I'll buy a $10 pair of socks, because it's trying to get you to change your purchase behavior. This is Amazon. I'm a shareholder, I must comment. But, and I'm not trying to sell you any of these. But it then sends me a $10 gift certificate because I bought a $10 pair of socks. So it's trying to train me now. And it's trying to train even how you ask. There's two hands in the back. We'll go with the one behind. Yeah?
How is the industry at updating and changing the copyright law that affects the royalty rates for streaming?
These are all great questions. And a lot of folks are heavily working on these issues. The question I kind of come to, is there a way to steer the ship instead of, I mean, part of it, can we help people have a better relationship with artists so that artists can get data to have an entire ecosystem and it not just be the streaming? But for a lot of people, especially in songwriting, streaming is a big part of the pie. But I look at it and see that most of it's, the vast majority of listening's going to 5,000 tracks. That you can look at the rates all you want for some of this stuff, but it's not going to be making that gigantic a difference. It's going to be having more of a, you know, that's less than 1%. We're turning, that's becoming the 1%ers. How do we, you know, we'll make it up in volume is what's been said over and over again. And part of it, when we're having bigger volume, we're having actually more tracks for that same $9.99. So in part, that's some of the slivering that's going on, is the success of the growth, but not getting consumers to pay a bigger chunk. Now, if you think about it, though, that people were, in the past, not necessarily buying a lot of albums either. So we are getting the people who are paying to be paying $120 a year, which is a lot more than your average person was paying, but then they're not buying iTunes, they're not buying CDs, they're buying vinyl. And cassettes now, cassettes. I'm feeling really old with the cassette thing going on.
What do you see as the future for free radio then? Where's the radio industry going? FM particularly. I mean, AM got out of the singles market and went to talk radio and sort of revivified itself with that. But what's the future for FM? Like, you know, played music and now everybody's paying subscriptions to listen to somebody else's curated playlist on their phone instead of, you know, the 35 committee-written playlist of songs on some radio station, which used to be, you know, Wolfman Jack or whatever, but now it's, you know,
Curated by very few people who are curating the list for radio. To me, the radio question ties somewhat with the AI and cars question. When do you listen to radio? That I talk to the 20-somethings in my classes who don't ever remember listening to radio. And some of the numbers that you can see on the radio studies is that you've got younger populations. It really drops off much more now about the music listening on the radio. And yet, the Nielsen 360 study looking at influencers for discovery still has radio taking a nice top spot with their research. That doesn't match my experiences all that much, but I do think that the question gets to be when you listen to the radio. And if you're not in a car, large number of 16-year-olds are getting no licenses for a long period of time. I think it's something, a couple years ago, it was 16% of 16-year-olds were getting their car licenses. The auto companies have been finding dramatic drops, and that starter car is just not happening. So if I'm not, but our commutes are going up, but we're bringing it with us, right? When will we be listening to the radio if we have so many other options? But time spent listening to radio has been chunking for quite a while, and yet iHeartRadio, Clear Channel, a piece of that pie. I mean, to me, the data is kind of mixed and squishy, and I'm not sure as to if I have ultimate choice of what I can listen to, am I going to take it with me? I don't know. There's a hand in the back. Yeah.
As far as just radio, it provides an interesting combination of almost all three of those big circles that you have, because it does provide the song, it does provide a sense of community, which is what some of those playlists that exist on Spotify and others that don't, like you don't have that sense of community. So I'm just interested in seeing how radio and the community could possibly coincide to kind of change the environment, because with apps like iHeartRadio and everything, it makes it possible to exist in that digital space in the terrestrial world almost.
Yes, and, I mean, so part of it is, though, that being not too cynical about radio, I've done a lot of things with radio over the years, but not presently, that still having so much centralized radio that had ingenuine locality, I mean, locality placed into it in programmed not locally and not for the local community, that radio has a heart to find in all of this and has a local space to find. I mean, this is not the only media having struggles. Local television, massive struggles. How to stay relevant, how to stay local, how to create community, how to have an engagement when they're trying to figure out what to do with the data they're getting themselves, and how to create a resonance. It's a real challenge for all media in this highly fragmented, distracted world to be able to be in your relationship, in your family, in your decisions, and not just providing you weather and traffic.
Yeah.
But there's a few other questions. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I guess the last few points kind of answered part of my question. I was thinking on the radio side, do you think it will come down to more about the talent aspect of radio? So people will tune in to hear Ryan Seacrest, or now maybe they'll hire their favorite digital influencer to curate a playlist once a week for this hour that people will tune in to listen to. Is that a viable alternative? Because when you listen to Spotify or wherever now, you're not hearing anybody besides the music. There's not that talent aspect of it. I don't know if people care as much about it now, but is that maybe something that could be kind of a viable alternative to be able to get more people back into terrestrial radio?
People watch QVC because, and there's great research behind it, because they really like the people who are selling them stuff. I have relatives who make sure they tune in at 3 o'clock on certain days so that the person they like that is talking directly to them is part of their life. NPR is having this massive resurgence or growth in podcasting because we want to hear these trusted voices in our lives. I love listening to people who aren't just of my political persuasion, but are of people who have great things to say, with podcasting coming to be such a intimate part of my life that I feel people are talking directly to me. I think that there is that need why some of these other curators are finding voice and space. And Spotify aren't the only playlist. There's a lot of other playlist communities, and then a lot of YouTubers who are massively influenced with playlists that people really have a personal relationship with that engagement. I think in this environment, that personal relationship is almost more important. I think my husband has Facebook friends that he thinks are more important than normal friends that he sees on these little tiny screens. That I think this sense of intimacy and community is getting to be more and more important. And I don't get it from a Spotify playlist, though my favorite Spotify playlist is Sleep, which has like 1 million something people who evidently use it like me to go to sleep. So,
I was going to say, I mean, in connection with, I think, his observation, I do feel like millennials, even though they're so digitized, crave connection. So I think there is a little bit of the wanting to go back to old school. There is a lot of the, wanting to, vinyls and, I don't know, a lot of music festivals that creates kind of a culture.
To be there present is incredibly important, and actually be there presently walkable. To be able to walk someplace and see the same people.
And that can't happen without the artists,
And wanting the artists to be local, though. I mean, the old Orpheum circuit, the artists had to all rotate to come back to where you were. You stayed to put in your local community. But in many ways, we're kind of go back to, what is the local circuit, though? What is the size of community? Who is? I know quite a few of my students, and I use that for my context, because I hang around with this group of 20-year-olds all the time. I've got kids that same age who don't talk to me as much, so that's good. But they consider the bands that they love their friends, and they will reach out to them, and I encourage them to reach out to them, and actually they now work for a lot of them, to be able to be part of that community to help make that happen, and I think that's some of the rich stuff going on. And it's different, it's a totally different engagement than the antiseptic playlist environment. You had a question, John?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I work as a producer, and given like the current state of everything, do you think time is better spent as a creator of music focusing on maybe creating a culture around like some of these artists that are not attached necessarily to like a major label right at the moment, or is it better spent pursuing like the major label cut, the big, the Jennifer Lopez cut, that kind of thing, given like the current state of everything?
I know of a lot of artists building a really nice world for themselves in that A versus B environment. Some of them are folks I know already on the backside of label deals at age 22 that are needing to figure out how do I create community. I'm running into many fabulous artist communities who are self-creating their own label and environments. And part of it is what you want to be and do, and who do you want to hang with, and what do you want to own of your life. And there's so many great label alternatives now that are not necessarily large. I mean, there's so many flavors of ice cream now. The question is, who's going to take care of you? We're seeing artists breaking out that are not label artists. We've been seeing that for some time. And a lot of it is to have great people around you and working with you, because it does take a village to make this stuff happen. And there's probably some good village people in this room, too. Not meaning to make them village people. Didn't really need to. She's doing YMCA in the back there. In the back.
How much of a financial influence do labels and corporations have on the tracks selected for these playlists, which seem to be dominating the streaming aspect of service?
Gigantic. Next question. But quite a few of the students I work with and grads I work with, this is their internship jobs, that they're smiling and dialing and getting stuff on. I mean, it's a very, and I know this third hand. Definitely people who are doing this first and second hand, though. This is both a brute force and relationship business, and if anybody else would like to share openly, we are live on broadcasting, but wants to talk about it. But to me, this is a very under-discussed topic. And
like payola almost.
I've heard it phrased as playola.
Okay.
But there's also a lot of just brute force work. A lot of relationships, a lot of algorithms. So you've got to show up on playlists to get on playlists. So a lot of people are playing that game to get onto the right playlist to be considered to then be on the bigger playlists, or be on certain Spotify playlists, see how they play to then move up. So there's an entire food chain thing going on, and it's art and science. And again, I know a lot of people who this is their first-hand job of what they do, and massive frustration, especially if you're an indie trying to play the playlist game. So, yeah.
Do you have a personal opinion as far as
I have lots of personal
prognosticating how long terrestrial radio will live, in your opinion?
What do you consider live, though? And part of it depends on the cost structure and what the alternatives are for a local community. I mean, we're a bit cynical here in Los Angeles because we have lots of other options, but being in a lot of the rest of the United States, it's still part of the heartbeat of how people...
It is, and I think part of the reason for that is that data hasn't been cheap enough to be unlimited, yet we're moving there quickly. If I'm in my car and I want to opt for an FM station over streaming, if I'm gonna blow the top of my data for that month and go over, especially with kids, et
And
cetera.
part of it though, how lazy are we, right? So I do a lot of driving, not just beautiful Los Angeles, but I do a lot of driving to Sacramento and back last weekend, et cetera. And I don't want to have to continuously figure out, do I have enough songs set up that I want to listen to? Do I know what play? I'm driving, I'm not looking to anything. And I'm poking at my stupid Sirius XM to do that for me, which I'm paying a lot of money considering that I am in the middle of Highway 5 and who knows what. But driving cross country, I spend a lot of time on AM, FM radio. I mean, part of it, will the stick values hold? Probably not. There's a lot of other alternatives, but if I'm a local advertiser, that's one of my only games to get out to people. How does local advertising cut into this space to get you to make decisions to buy your car, your stereo, your sofa? They're still a big piece of this pie, and the advertisers getting to you is a big part of the challenge. It's a big part of the fuel. And will you select in to having a relationship with your sofa provider? No, you probably are going to want more of a neutral setting to get that. I spent a lot of time in advertising as one of my 9 careers, so I tend to have that advertising hat on it. But that is a lot of the fuel. To me, that's the creepier part of the Alexa thing. How do you market into that? And I've actually gotten into an argument, not with the Alexa folks, and I actually had the fun of spending time with them at CES. They actually did design that stuff thinking about Star Trek and saying computer. And actually one of the options, you can have it call out computer. But I talked to was it Facebook V? No, Facebook M. There's several other ones haven't come out yet. And they were trying to convince me that the data will be neutral. And I'm going, there's no way the data under this is neutral, right? How do we as marketers get in that conversation? We have bots marketing to bots. Yeah. That's the AI part. That's where the fact that my AI, while I sleep, is going to be marketing my services and my company to other AIs that are trying to make selections for those of you who are trying to buy sofas. We're not going to be in that purchase decision, and our selections of what we do will be little tiny spaces that we have our AI select for us. And Amazon, again, I'm a shareholder, from really early on. And no, I will not do stock picks. I'm really good at my own though. But that they've been trying to make it so they're your one stop. They then help create that decision selection. They're actually selling classes now and other things that you can buy because they've herded you into a decision pool. How do advertisers and marketers of fabulous music and marketers of all sorts of things, how do they get in your head in a limited choice environment? So it's not just music, but advertisers have the same problem. Radio has the same problem. You have limited perceived time, space, and you've got the world in a little tiny box. How do you get in front of other people's worlds in a little tiny box? Other than community. Other than building new communities of trust. And then giving 30% of that to Amazon, Google, YouTube 45%. Right? So to me, the winners, we talk about negotiating against the winners, or against the behemoths, but they're taking a piece of the puzzle to create these atmospheres and to own your data. And to me, if I can unlock the data more so that relationship can be better to be back with me and my fans, and let my fans know of other opportunities to engage with me or buy other songs I've written or be part of my ecosystem or convince other people to write songs around this, or to perform music around songs, to find people to love my work is the superpower here. And the challenge here, because we're in an environment where this is a really fragmented, perceived attention deficit disorder, squirrel chasing world. How do we build the systems that empower choice, community, creativity, and all that? That's what I tell my kids. My own kids are trying to find careers in this world. Any other questions? Yes, sir?
Can you go back, when you're talking about discovery and the shifts and how we look at music and find it, right? Your 5,000 track algorithm. Is discovery now more efficient more democratic, less so? Like, talk about what preceded it and what that system was like and how it compares to what we have.
Oh, you're back to when I was essentially having to get airplane in Chicago from Clear Channel, and then also book space and everything else. I mean, part of it is the doors are opener. We've changed the gorilla for a different gorilla. We have oligopolies everywhere in all of this stuff, so it's not just the Googles and the YouTubes and the Facebooks, et cetera, et cetera. We've had oligopolies, we've had power control. There's major abilities to influence for a really long time. There's other ways to dance the dance now, but at the same time we have new dance partners who also have very large say-sos and are holding the keys in many ways.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.